my name is Trinity, and if you have found me, you're here to talk about books because I'm here to talk about books. Yay! And today we're going to be talking about my top 20 books of 2020. I was going to make this a top 10, but then I realized we're in 2020, so why not go ahead and talk about 20 books? I will actually be talking about more than 20 books, but you'll see why as we get into it. So, coming in at number 20 is an actual duology. The Raven's Blade duology by Anthony Ryan. Now, you guys may be looking at this video going, oh my gosh, Trinity put a Anthony Ryan in the number 20 spot on her top 20. Just wait, just wait. So, I'm putting this here because I felt really bad about having 3 Anthony Ryan books coming in the top 20. So, we're just doing this one at number 20 as a caveat with it's not actually number 20, but I wanted to go ahead and mention them. This is the conclusion to Vaylin Alsorna's story for now, but we are with an older Vaylin, and if you guys don't know, Bloodsong is the start of the original trilogy, and that is the Raven's Shadow trilogy. This is Raven's Blade, and we are with an older Vaylin, and we are seeing him as he comes to an age where he is settling down, and he wants to pursue the love of his life. And so he does, but he encounters a lot more than he bargained for in the journey to find. And I'm just going to say the love of his life because I don't want to ruin anything for people who have not yet read Bloodsong and that trilogy. But this is super action-packed. This is highly nostalgic for people who have been fans of the original trilogy. And it's so good. I highly recommend it. It is a new adventure for Vaylin, and Vaylin's story is not quite over yet. So I'm throwing this in here because I didn't want to pile Anthony Ryan on top of Anthony Ryan, but I did want to mention how good the Vaylin continuation is. Okay, the next couple that I'm going to mention are actually going to be either trilogies or duologies because it's hard to talk about one without talking about the rest, and I did read them in 2020. So the Cruel Prince trilogy, it's actually the Folk of the Air trilogy by Holly Black. I'm a huge sucker for fae. The second book in this series is actually my favorite fae novel of all time, and I really like this story. I want to throw out that this story is dark. The fae are malevolent, and the main character, Jude, is a little sketchy. So I do like gray morality characters, and this trilogy is chock full of them. I really also like adventure stories, action-packed stories, so this also provides that. And while there are some tropes in this, it is young adult, it does read young adult, but there's so much going on in these stories that I kept pushing through and really ended up enjoying Jude, her relationships with her sister, Carden, all of the things that go on in that aspect of the novels. And I really just enjoyed this story as a whole. Coming in at number 18 would be the Bonewitch Trilogy by Rin Shipeko. Again, it's dark. I like dark things. But we are following a necromancer named T, who is telling us her story of truth, her story of discovery, of how she came to be who she is in the present by exposing her past. And it is written in a way where we spend some time with present day tea and past tea, but the story continues to unfold in a very formulaic way. And we get to see how she became what she is, and we get to see why she is on this journey for revenge. And it is a beautiful unfolding. I really, really enjoyed it. And again, it's a young adult that I would recommend to anybody who likes a little bit of a darker story or likes stories that take time to unravel. Very, very good. So next on my list is the Six of Crows duology. I have really enjoyed Leigh Bardugo's writing. And I love how different these two books are from each other, because the first book is a heist novel and you get introduced to some really great characters, and you don't get to spend a lot of time with the characters in their heads or anything like that. You just get to see this story unfold as the heist unfolds. However, Crooked Kingdom does explore these characters in depth, and it is a revenge story. So they are two completely different books, and I say that like how they're written, but you get to follow these characters who you got a chance to know in Six of Crows with this fast-paced heist novel, and then you get to watch them grow in Crooked Kingdom, and I really, really enjoyed that. Okay, coming in at number 16, The Witch's Daughter by Paula Braxton. Now, we all know how much I love witches on this channel. I am a huge fan of witches. And this story is another that takes time to unfold. We start off with meeting Elizabeth as an older lady who is obviously trying to stay isolated, and you don't really know exactly why, but it's very journal-esque in the way it's written. And she ends up adopting this young girl named Tess, or they adopt each other because she shows up in her garden one day and won't go away. And while Tess is there, Elizabeth begins to talk to her about her past. And this story unravels over a great period of time where Elizabeth is telling Tess about the history of witches. But what Tess doesn't realize is in all of these retellings, or all of these tellings of this story, it is Elizabeth's life as she takes on a new character and a new setting. And she has actually been alive for the period she's speaking of, which is about 300 years. And what we've come to find out is she's running from something. I won't spoil what that is, but she has been running from this thing her entire life. And that's why she keeps taking on new characters. And does this thing show up again? We shall see, right? Okay, and coming in at number 15 is The Broken Eye by Brent Weeks. Now, this is the third in a series, the Lightbringer series, which I absolutely love. The characters in this are great. I really love Gavin Guile. I really love Kip. I don't want to get into too much detail about what this is about because I don't want to spoil the rest of the series or the beginning of the series, but just know that this story takes so many twists and turns that it's truly difficult to see all of them coming, but it's written in a way that is very compelling, and the magic system in this world is the best I've ever read, and I cannot get enough of this story. Coming in at number 14 would be Malice by John Gwynne. I loved this setup novel. I hate setup novels, but I loved this setup novel. And there is tropes in this, which is not something that I am used to seeing in high fantasy, epic fantasy. But the tropes that it utilizes, it turns on its head. There are animal companions in this. So if you are a fan of animal companions, then here's your book for epic fantasy. But I really enjoyed John Gwynn's writing. It's highly accessible. And even for someone who doesn't like a large cast of characters in their books or the constant changing of POVs in their books, this was really good. And so I really enjoyed like all of the family aspects in this. There is some chosen one scenarios. There is some I'm the best at everything, even though I just started types of things going on here. But I almost feel like here it's intentional. There's reasons. It's not just thrown in so you can be like, okay, my character's a badass. But it seems like it's going somewhere instead of just being one of those tropes that stunts the actual enjoyment of the novel. So do with that what you will, but I totally enjoyed Malice, and I'm really excited to be reading Valor here in the near future. Okay, coming in at number 13, The Obsidian Tower by Melissa Caruso. I have recommended this book to everybody I know. The representation in this book is phenomenal. The atmosphere of this book is phenomenal. The magic in this book is phenomenal. I loved reading this book, and I loved all the intricacies of this book, and there was just so much going on with the Obsidian Tower. There was so much going on with Rix, which is the main character, and I enjoyed reading about her and her plight and her problems and the challenges she was facing because of who and what she is. She cannot touch people or she can kill them. So her whole life she's had to deal with this, and someone shows up and says, hey, you don't have to live life like that anymore. You just have to do this really horrible thing and we can fix it. So not only are we getting the political intrigue because she's the warden of this land, but we're also getting her struggle with self, her struggle with identity, and her struggle to actually become something more than the girl people can't touch, something more than just the warden of her land. And it is a really great exposition on identity. It's a really great exposition on relationships. I thoroughly enjoyed this novel. Okay, coming in at number 12, we have A Plague of Giants by Kevin Hearn. This is my first Kevin Hearn, but I read about 50 pages of this and then went and picked up the entire Iron Druid series. I loved his writing so much. I really loved the bard in this, and I really loved the magic that allowed the bard to take on different characters. The magic in this was so good. The bone giants are terrifying, and the way this story comes together and just entwines on top of itself is phenomenal. And learning the different cultures in this book was so great. And I can't wait to read the rest of these. I know that there's at least 2 others that have been released that I haven't got my hands on yet. But when I read this as an ARC, I was blown away. Loved it so much. Again, I went and bought everything else that he had published. And so I can't wait to dive into the Iron Druid series. I can't wait to get into more of this series. Phenomenal. Okay, coming in at number 11, no shocker here, To Sleep in a Sea of Stars by Christopher Paolini. I recommend the audiobook because Jennifer Hale is the narrator. Jennifer Hale is Commander Shepard from Mass Effect. This book reads like Mass Effect. I went on and on about this book already, but I do want to mention this book has a bittersweet ending. This book has a slow start, and it does read like you're playing a Mass Effect game where you go from ship to mission, companions to mission, and it reads like that through the whole book, and I enjoyed that aspect. There's a lot of people who did not enjoy that aspect of this novel. But to me, it was very nostalgic in the way that I am used to playing Mass Effect. And when I was listening to an interview with Christopher Paolini and Jennifer Hale, they talked about this and how this was the intent when he wrote the book, was for it to read like a Mass Effect game, and that when they started trying to decide who was going to be the narrator, it could only be one person, Commander Shepard. It had to be her. And I thought that just clicked in my brain as yes, this is what I'm talking about. This is what I keep trying to tell everyone else. And so I enjoyed it. I thoroughly recommend it, especially if you're a Mass Effect fan. Pick it up. It's great. Coming in at number 10, All Systems Red by Martha Wells, The Murderbot Diaries. It is the first in the series, and it is great. It is a very wholesome story, so I really recommend this to anybody who wants to start reading sci-fi. I can't recommend this one enough. It's so short that I don't want to tell you what the story is, other than this is a robot who hates humans but loves to sit around and watch soap operas. That's all it wants to do. That's all it wants to do. Okay, at number 9, The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. I've also talked about this book quite a lot, so I don't want to go into too much detail, but it is horror. And it is parody horror, so it is poking fun at a lot of things. One of those being racism, one of them being mental health. So Grady Hendrix writes all of his novels this way, where they are horror, but they're a commentary on something else. They're a parody of something else. And while I enjoy this aspect of his novels, there's a lot of people who don't enjoy this aspect of his novels. At number 8, The Firemen by Joe Hill, another horror novel. This one was so epic in scope that I am just blown away. I could not believe the amount of things that I enjoyed out of this. The Harry Potter references, the fact that there are so many people out to kill these people with these markings on their bodies because they explode, but the book turns itself on its head by showing you the perspective of these people with the markings trying to survive in this world. And it is so good. And the main character is so fantastic. She is a woman with a woman's needs and a woman's wants, but she's strong. She's pig-headed, and she's ready to fight for what she wants and what she believes. And I just enjoyed this book from start to finish. Another bittersweet ending, but so good. Coming in at number 7, my most recent read, The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. Now, you might be wondering why this one isn't higher up, and that is just because of my personal taste. That has no reflection on the book itself, because it was absolutely brilliant. It's sci-fi, it's multiverse. I've talked about it quite a bit, but there is really great bi-representation in this story. And it is about a girl named Kara, who takes on a job as a traverser. She is exploring all of these parallel worlds just like ours, but somehow slightly different, to see if the worlds can advance. She falls into a much larger plot than what even the reader realizes. And she goes on this journey, again, of self-discovery, of trying to find out what she values in life. And it is beautiful, brilliant, probably one of the best sci-fi I have read in a really long time. And I mean, it beat To Sleep in a Sea of Stars in my top 20, guys. Brilliant. The rest of these could very well be interchangeable, because my enjoyment of the rest of these novels was so like mind-blowingly good. I did not know how to rank these next novels, because my enjoyment could have been based on emotional connection. My enjoyment could have been based on, you know, the completion of a story I love so much. And it could have just been that I loved how fun this book was. So the rest of this list, you can count them in my number 1 spot if you'd like. You can count them in my number 6 spot if you'd like. However you want to look at it, the rest of this is just, I could gush about these books for eternity. So at number 6 is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. This is a heartbreaking, beautiful story about 2 sisters who live in France and undergo the Nazi occupation of France. And both of their stories are absolutely heartbreaking. One of them does become the Nightingale who shepherds British soldiers across country lines to save their lives. And the other is a mother who is just trying to ensure that her family and the families of those surrounding her, the children of those surrounding her, survive. And so the tale is completely gripping from start to finish. By the time I was in this book by 100 pages, I knew this was going to be one of my favorites. And I ugly cried straight up for 15 minutes as the story wrapped up and you find out how it ends, and you're just, so beautiful. Again, another bittersweet endings. You might see a trend here. I do like bittersweet endings. And I can't, you know, be like, I recommend this to everybody, because there are so many trigger warnings with it being set in war. But it is beautiful and it is gripping, and I want to tear up just talking about it. At number 5 is The Library of the Unwritten by A.J. Hackwith. This book was so fun. It was so not what I expected, but when you talk about book characters escaping their book and trying to live their lives, it sounds ridiculous, and it is. But the way that AJ wrote this story was absolutely fantastic. We go from hell to earth to Valhalla as our characters are running from angels, because these angels think that they hold the devil's book, and they don't. But there's this whole scheme behind this where, while these characters are on the run, the library is trying to be taken by the demons. And so the story just goes like so fast paced, and just you keep trying to figure out what is going on, how this is happening, like how are they going to get to where they need to go? Can they escape these angels? Is the library going to go up in flames? Like, so much is going on, but it was so fun to read, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I would recommend it to anybody who just wants a fun book. Okay, coming in at number 4 is Burial Rites by Hannah Kent. This was on my TBR for the longest time. I don't know why I didn't read it, but it's about a girl who has been convicted of murder. And she, in being convicted of murder, she has to undergo rites from a priest to save her soul before she is executed. And during the course of this, you find out her true story and what all she's gone through in her life and how she got to be where she is. And it is, again, it's dark, it's beautiful, it's gripping. This book will stick with me for a long time because of how beautiful it was written and how well it was delivered. The execution of the story was phenomenal. I cannot say enough good things about this book. But it is, again, dark, so I would look up trigger warnings for this story. Amazing. And coming in at number 3, The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. Again, this was just a beautiful, beautiful book about the choices we make in life. And the message in this story is so compelling, so gripping, just so beautiful. Trigger warnings for suicide, because that's how the book starts. Our main character has had enough of life. Life is just horribly bad. She commits suicide. And on the other side of that, she is introduced to the Midnight Library, where it holds all of the choices that she could have made in life. And the library is open to her to pick a different path, to see if making a different choice could have changed her life for the better, or if it would have just been different. And I love the way that this was executed. I love the discussions it could bring up about choices we make and how we live our lives. And it was just so phenomenal that, again, I have been recommending it to everybody because I feel like this is a book that needs to be read. Coming in at number 2 is The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. Again, I have not read a book that was so to the T on my personal tastes. It's dark, it's gripping, it's beautiful, atmospheric, the magic is great, the horror of the story is great. I loved every single thing about this, and I just did a video about this, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but know that if I could have written a book, this would have been the book I wrote. And I love all aspects of it. Now for number 1. No one is going to be surprised. I read The Empire of Ashes by Anthony Ryan. It is the final book in the Draconis Memoria trilogy, which is my favorite fantasy series of all time. And the way this book wrapped up was so satisfying. I loved this book. This book got me reading again in 2020. This book killed, crushed, stomped my reading slump. And I love this series so much. I love the characters so much. Anthony Ryan's writing is just so great. Like, I am entranced when reading a book by him. So I would highly recommend the Draconis Memoria series to any fantasy lover. It has been described by me and others as a blend of Pirates of the Caribbean, Mistborn, and Indiana Jones, and that is thoroughly correct. And so good. But that is my top 20 books of 2020. I hope I have turned you on to some more books. I hope I have added to your TBR. Maybe I talked you out of books. I don't know. But these are the ones that blew my mind in 2020 that I can't wait to continue on these series. I can't wait to pick up more from these authors. And I hope your 2020 was as good a reading year as mine.